states begin to see job losses from Trump cuts, housing, and spending slowdowns. So what I've seen in my neighborhood is I'm seeing for rent signs popping up all over the place, it seems like. So I'm gradually seeing for rent signs coming up in Inglewood, California. And I know it's not because it's the end of the year or getting close to the end of the year and people are just deciding to move. I believe a lot of people have been affected, and I'm saying this from these Trump cuts. So I'm starting to see the effects of what's going on. So it is real, unfortunately. So it says cars are flooded in Petersburg, Virginia. And in July, many of the canceled federal contracts that have contributed to job losses in the state involved flooding control. So Virginia and New Jersey may be among the states most affected by the hiring slowdown that enraged President Donald Trump when it appeared August the 1st jobs report, so showing the U.S. 258,000 fewer jobs than initially reported in May and June. So such revisions to earlier reports are based on more up-to-date payroll data and are routine, but the scale in this case was shocking, showing the smallest monthly job gains since pandemic era of December 2020. So the largest job revision outside recessions since 1968. So in response, Trump declared the numbers were wrong, fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics chief, and offered as a replacement E.J. Antoni, a loyalist, of course, who has proposed suspending the job report. So Trump falsely said that on Truth Social post that he had said that the revised job numbers were rigged in order to make Republicans and me look bad. But let me tell you, I'm going to stop while I'm reading this. This is Virginia. Here in California, what I'm seeing is a lot of for rent signs popping up all over in the community. And so in Inglewood, California, there is a mixed community of Hispanic and African American, and I'm seeing a lot of for rent signs. Just about a year ago, you didn't see that many for rent signs, but now I'm seeing more for rent signs popping up. A lot of people that are now displaced or they have to leave because of deportation issues or self-deporting or job loss. So I am seeing that the effects are great. And I just spoke with somebody on the phone. Several people I've been hearing, people I've been talking to, have been saying that they've been getting a lot of calls from people saying that they had lost their job or either they had to relocate because of the cuts. So going back to the article, him saying that they rigged the numbers to make Republicans and him look bad, I don't think that's the truth. I believe a lot of people have been affected by these cuts that Trump had made. So a lot of people have been losing their jobs, or either they have to downsize or work outside of other institutions, because what has happened with some of these jobs, they've either had to lay off people or they've had to hire less people, and they have people sitting waiting to see if they're going to get work. So a lot of people have been affected. Even I have been affected. So I had to even change where I was working at to find another avenue or other options, because even the place where I was at was affected by the cuts. So I know it to be real firsthand. So it is true, a lot of people have been affected by it. Now, some it's worse for others, where they're not only have like a job loss, but they have maybe issues with immigration. And then there's some who maybe they didn't lose their job, but their job has them on a furlough, or they have them sitting waiting, wondering when they're going to be called back into work. And so that was sort of like what was happening to me. So there wasn't a loss of a job. It was more like waiting to see when they're going to call. And so there's a pool of a lot of us waiting. And so they scaled down the numbers. A year ago, there were budgets that were better, where they had more people that were on the job. But when they started doing the cutting, they had to really skim down or shave off all of the employees, because they didn't have as much money to pay everybody. So by him cutting the budgets like this is how it has affected so many people. And so I've been hearing some people from different companies saying that they didn't receive payments from people, and they were wondering why people were relocating. And then they realized that it was a domino effect. So it's happening to a lot of people in a lot of these metro cities. So it says, beyond those attention-grabbing actions, going back to the article, the numbers demonstrate the real effects of Trump's work slashing federal governments. So a lot of government jobs, their budgets were cut. So a lot of people are not able to probably come up with the money for rents, or maybe they're going to be late, or they're going to have to relocate and move, or maybe they may not be moving, maybe they just have to look for another place to work, because the government jobs are the ones that were hit the hardest. And that's why a lot of people are having to now weigh their options on what they're going to do so they can continue on. So a state line analysis of the data shows how several states, especially Virginia and New Jersey, shed the jobs in the second quarter of this year, which includes May and June. So this is Virginia, but it's not only in Virginia and New Jersey, it's in a lot of the metro cities. So this is just yet but one article that is sort of demonstrating what has happened. So as an example, so in Virginia there were job losses blamed on canceled federal contracts in Northern Virginia as part of the cuts made by Elon Musk's department, which better known as the government efficiency known as DOGE. So meanwhile, a slow housing market was shuttered. A plywood factory in the southern part of the state, and DOGE's efforts canceled flooding control contracts on the coast as well. So, Jay Ford, Virginia policy manager at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, told a state legislative committee in June that $50 million in contracts were slashed in the Hampton Roads area near the coast, causing a spike in unemployment claims. So that's another thing that is now being flooded again. The last time that happened was during COVID, and now unemployment is starting to tick up again, because a lot of people have lost their jobs, and people who work for government, maybe government jobs, which you thought those were the safest jobs, but not under this administration. And it was starting to become like that even before Trump took office, that the government jobs weren't as secure as they once were. So that included $20 million to address flooding in Hampton, where Almost a quarter of the homes are in a flood zone. So 24 million to repair the Portsmouth Dam that could fall in a major storm. So you already heard what happened to the agency called NOAA, which they come to help, like FEMA come to help in times of disaster. So we saw that flood that happened out in that other area where some girls were basically they drowned and they went missing, and a lot of them ended up dead. And so that was pretty bad. But going on with the article, this work that you desperately needed, Ford said at a committee hearing, there was a real focus on certain buzzwords like climate and resilience, and I think people conflated some of these projects as somehow unnecessary. So I guess the article then goes on. It says, for instance, the American Institute for Research announced 233 layoffs in Virginia in May and 50 in Maryland since the beginning of the year. And the not-for-profit organization projects include working with the school districts to solve achievement gaps, absenteeism, and creating AI-driven workforce training, and addressing health care issues such as improving kidney disease care while reducing Medicare costs, strengthening access to health care by keeping rural hospitals open. The changes occurring in the federal government have brought significant changes, or challenges that is, for many federal contractors, including Air and Dana Tofig, the company spokesperson. So it goes on to say other recent layoffs in Virginia: 442 workers in Northern Virginia. Mitre, which manages federally funded defense research centers, and faced $28 million in canceled federal contracts. 554 workers at a shuttered plywood factory in Southern Virginia, they had lost their jobs as well. So housing affordability challenges and a 30-year low in existing home sales are impacting our plywood business, as many of our plywood products are used in repair and remodel projects, which often occur when homes change ownership. So Georgia Pacific said this in a May news release. So State Line looked at 2 state job surveys for the second quarter that sometimes have quite different results. So the so-called payroll survey of businesses that the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses for its monthly report, which has yet to be revised at the state level, and the BLS, Local Area Unemployment Statistic Program, which estimates job changes based on monthly household surveys. So the LAUS estimates, and often called the household survey because they rely mostly on surveys of households asking how many people are employed. They include jobs the payroll survey can't get, such as the contract and agricultural jobs and capture jobs where people live rather than states where employers are located. So in the state like Virginia, with the high number of federal employees, the contract workers' lost jobs may show up sooner in the household survey, since many federal jobs are not reflected on the state level payroll if they are done by subcontractors. So if the agency or contractor is based in another state, or if Doge cuts allowed people to stop work but stay on the payroll until September, but those people might report being unemployed in the household survey but wouldn't show up in the other surveys until about October. So a lot of places are suffering. So interjecting within the article, before I'm reading the rest of it, A lot of cities, a lot of rural areas have been hit with job loss and cuts, and businesses. So, like just under there, if you see in the blue, it says Midwest farm economies. They suffered while Sun Belt states kept rolling in early 2025. So, a lot of places have been impacted by these cuts. Household surveys show that the same number of slowing job gains as the revised national payroll report. So it may be a window into the trends, many caused by Trump administration cuts in government, healthcare, and foreign aid, and also by slowing sales in the stores and the housing market as well. So when you cut people's jobs and people lose jobs, most of those people are consumers. So they're not going to be able to go to restaurants and go to, theme parks as often, go travel. And I don't know if you all heard, but Las Vegas is being hit hard. Tourism has slowed for Las Vegas a great deal. And a lot of people that used to just go there, you're not going to see as much of that. It had slowed down. So maybe they're looking for the holidays to maybe things pick back up. But the way jobs have been cut and the way unemployment is starting to tick up, might not be as big of a turnout as it was like a year ago. So it says both surveys rely on small samples and are often revised later, said Charles Gascon, an economist and research officer at the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis. So more definitive quarterly census and unemployment wages are set for the release December the 3rd. For the second quarter will show patterns more conclusively, he said. So the household survey showed Virginia with the largest job losses in the country for the second quarter, down on 43,000 and job losses every month since February. That's really bad. So, and that's a large number too in us. You think of smaller, it's not as heavily populated as the cities, but that's a lot of job loss. Before that, the state gained jobs every month since the height of the pandemic job losses in April of 2020. So New Jersey, which had the most job losses, 15,400 in the separate second quarter payroll survey, has suffered layoffs. Now this is what I was telling you. Layoffs in retail stores hit by a slowdown in consumer spending. So if you got stores and a lot of people are not really coming to buy the products and they're not shopping, then the sales start to slump. Therefore, it might also hurt the businesses. Therefore, they might end up laying off people. So it begins to be a domino effect. So there's also been increased shoplifting, and among drugstores, lawsuits for the role in the opioid epidemic, which is rampant right now. You wouldn't believe. It's probably even higher now because of the job losses and nothing for people to look forward to. So Walmart announced 481 layoffs. This is in Hoboken, at its Hoboken, New Jersey corporate office. Then Rite Aid drugstores, they laid off 1,122 amid the Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They were affected by the opioid crisis lawsuits that also had hit. There were lawsuits that hit Walmart and other pharmacy chains. So Big Pharma is in trouble, of course. And the firms Bristol Myers Squibb and Novartis also have announced hundreds of layoffs as well in New Jersey, citing patent expirations on popular drugs as well. So they say that there's wobbly state finances. Rising unemployment combined with weak revenue growth suggests economic fragility for state finances. This is said by Lucy Dayan, a principal research associate for Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, who tracks the state's tax revenue. So nationally, unemployment was 4.2% in July, and the same as July 2024, but up from recent lows of 3.4% in April of 2023, with the largest increase in Mississippi, Virginia, and Oregon. So all those places, they're more rural or southern places, are being hit and hit real hard, even more so. So unemployment, they say it dropped the most compared with July 2024 in Indiana, Illinois, New York, West Virginia. The states with the highest unemployment rates in July were California, 5.5%, Nevada, 5.4%, Michigan, 5.3%, while the lowest were in South Dakota, 1.9%, North Dakota, 2.5%, and Vermont, 2.6%. So I think the dramatic May and June jobs revision signals economic fragility. So the state level warning signs suggest the impacts will show gradually. So Data said this, and of course states are facing fiscal challenges as well, caused by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act tax and spending decisions. So you remember when he passed that what is called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act? It has also caused a lot of these problems with the budgets being fragile. So state finances are a mixed picture, with income tax growth weak as consumers retreat on spending. This is Dadian said this. So the state layoff figures are giving us an early read. So in Virginia, economically distressed areas around Emporia will suffer aftershocks from the plywood plant closing. This is said Del Otto Watchman, a Republican who represents the area of the state house and delegates. So the area is already reeling from the indefinite closures of a nearby Boarhead lunch meat plant. This is what happened, that they employed 600 people after the listeria outbreak there last year. So the community part of the southern wood basket region has a large logging industry that will now struggle to find new markets farther away with higher costs for trucking. This is Watchman said. So we're working hard to find new industries to come here. Layoff rates in April, as calculated by the online human resource platform, showed New Jersey, Vermont, Virginia, and that platform, I wasn't able to say it, but it's Tesher. So it says it shows that New Jersey, Vermont, and Virginia that had the highest rates. So Amanda Godwell, Godall, a workforce analyst who calls herself the job chick on social media, said the layoffs reflect restructuring in major corporations as well as federal cutbacks. So she wrote about the layoff rates in a recent post. So these are not statistical flukes. They reflect the real corporate moves in the New Jersey and Virginia, especially. Godall wrote in an email statement to the state line, the bigger issue is that nobody on the ground cares what the unemployment rate says if they can't find an interview for a job they're qualified for. So state layoff figures are giving us an early read. California and Texas saw the biggest job gains in both surveys in the second quarter. So Texas added 42,700 jobs in a payroll survey, with the largest increase coming in the category of private educational services, 14,400 jobs. The state approved a plan for school vouchers. The the start of next year, according to the state-to-state line, the Texas Workforce Commission. So California had added 24,300 jobs, but the household survey showed an increase of almost 111,000 jobs, the highest in the country. So the Public Policy Institute of California blog post in July called the state labor market at best in a hold steady pattern this year, citing that the state's stubbornly elevated unemployment rate, 5.4%, but also its job improvement over last year. A whole steady pattern is a welcome change for a year ago, or from a year ago, said the post by Sarah Bond, a senior fellow at an institute. State line reporter Tim Henderson can be reached, and then they have the email, how you can reach the person. But I'm just telling you now, I was reading this and I know it was pretty lengthy, and I'm sorry for that, but just being honest with you, a lot of this is like, jargon and whatnot. But what I'm seeing, the reason why I picked this article is because it opens up the conversation about job loss. When they did that one big beautiful bill tax, a lot of cuts came from for health care, Section 8, SNAP benefits, people who are on government, programs. A lot of these schools are affected by it. They had to downsize their workforce. A lot of this stuff they don't really talk about as much on the news, and then if they do talk about things like this, they kind of gloss over it, and they always want to highlight the positives and never show you what the negatives are underneath our underlying problems. The unemployment lines are probably starting to tick up again. And what I know I see is a lot of for rent signs that once weren't. I recall I said in a previous video, I would get up in the morning, get ready to go to work, and you would see all the cars, people just scrambling to go leave so they can go to work. Now you don't really see that much of that anymore. And I noticed I didn't really see a lot of for rent signs, I say the beginning of this year until now, close to the close of the summer, and when school started back, that's when I started seeing, when they started having ICE come out to a lot of the blue states, and he started deploying a lot of these agents, the ICE agents. I started seeing more people that looked like they weren't going to work, and a lot of cars that were just parked out in front. And it was a switch from what I had seen the last 2 years ago. You'd see people scrambling to go to work, but now you don't really see as much of it because of the job losses. And so it's a real thing, you guys. These cuts have really changed people's life, and not for the best. So when they say make America great, it is not great right now for a lot of people. And I've been seeing people look like they're around in the neighborhood trying to wash people's cars, trying to fix on people's cars. A lot of people trying to do gig jobs, just trying to make ends meet. They're trying to find any little way to hang on, but sometimes that's not enough to pay the bills and the rents. And the rents are high, and the food, oh my goodness, let's not even begin. When you go in the grocery store, I don't know if you noticed this, but the meats are so expensive. Just to get some beef, oh my God, they went up so high on the cereals, the meats. At first people noticed the eggs were expensive. They still kind of high. The eggs are high in some places. For a carton of eggs, they want $8. you have to go to certain places where they have a sale going, and you might can catch a sale where it's not as expensive. But the meats, oh my God, I think that's probably, if not the eggs, I don't know if anybody been looking at it, but the meats are real high. Just to get, like, like if you trying to get meat like beef and all that, oh my goodness, it's so expensive. But anyway, I just thought I would leave you with that. I hadn't really did any videos because I've been really busy, and I've been, trying to pay attention to what's been going on in the world, and it is affecting a lot of people. A lot of people are affected by these cuts. So what have happened in your neighborhood? I know you've been seeing some changes. Some people are still in denial. Others are starting to wake up. I'm noticing a lot of more people are starting to see that these decisions, if they pick this person to be leader, that it was not a good decision, because I don't think they really thought this was going to affect them the way it has. But it has really, really affected a lot of people. And I'm seeing, like, just now, I went outside and I'm seeing furniture at the curb, people moving out. They haven't even been here a year, and already they gotta relocate. All right. Hopefully we can get through this year. It hasn't even been a year yet, and all of this has caused great financial harm to a lot of families.